This week's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is brought to you by the People's Company. That's right, they are back as a sponsor because so often I hear from farmers throughout Iowa and throughout the Midwest who are listening to the podcast while they are planting, while they are harvesting. They're in their tractors, they're in their combines, which makes the People's Company a perfect partner for the Moonlight Graham Show here. As you guys probably well know, the People's Company is based in West Des Moines, Iowa, but they've really grown to be one of the nation's leading providers in land brokerage, land management, land appraisal, and investment services. These guys, and I know Andrew Zelmer and Matt Adams over there at the People's Company, these guys live and breathe farmland, farm management, and they know that industry better than anybody. So if you're looking to buy a farm, sell a farm, having an auction coming up, call the People's Company. They are the best in the business. Check them out at peoplescompany.com.
This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. Once again, I am your host, Tim Flattery, and our Moonlighter for today is a guy by the name of Joey Mellows, but you know him as the Baseball Brit. Back in 2019, Joey Mellows, the baseball Brit, came across the pond to spend his entire summer traveling across the entire United States, visiting every ballpark he could get to. He even got up into Canada to celebrate the game of baseball. Now, of course, Joey, growing up over across the pond, he did not grow up around the game of baseball, but fell in love with the game while he was a teacher over in South Korea. And so last summer, he decided to come over to the United States to experience America's pastime in the United States. And I started following Joey on Twitter right at the start of his adventure last year. And let me tell you, he is one of the best baseball follows you can have on Twitter. The way he talks about the game of baseball, the amount of joy he has just visiting the ballpark every day, the way he sees the game through fresh eyes and experiences the intricacies of the game of baseball, it's really refreshing. You know, a lot of times in America, especially baseball fans, we can get pretty cynical and pretty negative about the game of baseball. And it's fun to look at the game through a fresh set of eyes like the baseball Brit. And if you add in his fantastic British accent and his great mustache, you have one heck of a baseball character. So this was a real pleasure to get Joey, the baseball Brit, on the podcast to talk about his trip last year, to talk about what he's doing now. And I was excited to find out that he was going to be writing a book on his experiences visiting all the ballparks throughout America last year. That's going to be one that you absolutely cannot miss. And if you're a baseball fan, I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Joey Mellows. So after you get done listening to the podcast, make sure to follow Joey Mellows, the baseball Brit, on Twitter as well. You will not regret it. He is a really fun follow. And if you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, make sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever it is that you listen to your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show, and you know the drill. Leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. And guys, we have a brand new Moonlight Graham shirt out there. Head over to our website at moonlightgrahamshow.com. Purchase our brand new shirt. You guys are going to love it. It's our best shirt yet. And enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter, Joey Mellows, the baseball Brit. But before we get to our interview, I know it's a tough time right now and a lot of people are out of work. So I wanted to talk about a new sponsor we have on the show, buildiowa.org. Because the construction industry, especially throughout the Midwest, is still up and running and hiring. And so I was just on this website, buildiowa.org, and what really stood out to me was how much the professional men and women in this industry make. Did you know that professional estimators on average make between $62,000 and $80,000 a year? How about crane operators? What a cool job that is. They make between $60 and $70,000 a year on average. The other great part about buildiowa.org is how they spell out exactly how you can get started in the 27 different careers they have listed on the website. They have active resources to companies that are training and hiring. That's right, hiring right now. We know some of you Moonlighters are looking for a career change, or perhaps you've been impacted by this pandemic. If that's you, head on over to buildiowa.org buildiowa.org and check out the incredible careers available right now in the construction industry. There's also a link to a job board that lists active jobs that are open right now. The good people at Build Iowa are here to help, and they want to make you aware that there are rewarding career options available for you. And for those of you on social media, check them out. You can find them Build Iowa on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. That's right, buildiowa.org. I know you're a big part of the online KBO community, so I bet it's a big day for you.
Yeah, it's a league that got me into baseball. So I think I've been at opening day for the last 5 seasons, including last year when I was on the road for most of it, but I still made sure I was there. So yeah, it's weird not being there this year, but I'm not an expert, by the way, Tim. Like, if you're looking for in-depth kind of pitching repertoires and types of swing and names and all that stuff, I'm not your guy. But certainly, I can talk about the ballparks and the culture and the fandom over there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been following you now, Joey, for about a year. I think around opening day last year, when I saw that you had decided to do this American journey through baseball, I started following you pretty early. What prompted you to make that decision and go to America and do baseball?
Oh, boy. So last year, I tried to go to 162 games, a full season. The thing that prompted that, if I'm being brutally honest, and it's something I don't like bringing up most of the time because it's a bit personal, but I was meant to be moving in with a girl and, quite a serious thing. She had a kid and I've been saving up money and stuff for the move and for potentially a wedding and things like that in the future. Maybe not with her, but when I was 23 and got my first job, I began saving for the future, mortgage and a wedding and a car and that kind of thing. So when that went wrong, I just thought, geez, I'd already handed in my notice at work, so I couldn't go back to them and say, actually, you can have that job back again. So I just thought, let's just do it. Let's just hit the road. I've always wanted to go on a road trip, watching Hollywood movies growing up as a boy. The fact that your country's so big compared to ours. And, if I drive 5 hours north of where I live, I'm in a different country, or I'm in the sea if I go east or west. So, or south, I'm on the south coast. So it was just the adventure and the road trip and the fact that my personal circumstances kind of changed quite suddenly. And I thought, let's have a lovely year and, put this on the back burner.
So it all started with a broken heart. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I mean, she probably did me a favor, and I'm sure she got off lightly as well. So yeah, hopefully it's worked out for both of us. No hard feelings, that's for sure. And I had a great year, and all the money went, my life savings went, and I don't regret it for 1 minute.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, you funded that whole trip yourself, right? You weren't sponsored. Somebody wasn't paying you to promote baseball. You were just doing it because you love baseball and you wanted to have an adventure.
Yeah, I wish they were sponsoring me. I went up to MLB London before I left for the trip for three meetings actually. And I was kind of hoping they might say, "Hey Joey, we'll sort you out on this because you're promoting the London series and all that stuff." But no, there was no sponsorship. I did some work for ESPN as well for a European baseball show called Caps Off. Didn't get a penny for that either. So it was all my own life savings. I worked in a boarding school for 10 years, so I've never paid rent. Like most people have to pay rent or pay a mortgage. I worked 6-7 day weeks in a boarding house looking after high school teenagers from Hong Kong mostly, albeit in England for the first 5 years I was doing it. So I just got lucky that I was able to save, and it was just because I worked 6-7 day weeks for like 10 years.
So as we've been communicating through this, and you and I tried to get together last year, you were coming through Des Moines, Iowa to watch the Iowa Cubs last year. They ended up getting rained out that day, and I think you just went on to Kansas City, so it didn't work out. But as you and I have been communicating over this past year through Twitter DMs, you always call me old boy and chap. Is this a way you're trying to be funny, or is this how British people actually talk?
No, first things first, as Brits, we're all different. So the way I speak, certainly I don't speak for other people here, but being a teacher and stuff for 10 years, I kind of had to learn that you've got to replace certain words like crikey and crumbs and sugar and fudge instead of, I think you can guess what a few of those words are. And, one of them is blasphemous. So I say crikey or crumbs instead of that. And my mates and stuff. And my dad was always saying old chap and, old boy and that kind of stuff. So golly, I've never heard him swear. So yeah, I think it's just a personal family thing.
Yeah, when I had Andy Brown, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Andy Brown, who traveled last year, painted all of the American ballparks, and he has an affinity for the KBO as well as you do, I know. He said that Americans curse more than British people do. Would you say that is true as well?
I wouldn't want to speak for all British people. I know people at my local boozer that, swear like sailors all the time. So yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true. I wouldn't want to say that for all the UK people, but Andy's a lovely bloke. I used to watch a lot of Korean games with him. We worked at the same school in Korea. We overlapped there for 3 years. So that's how I know Andy, the very talented British artist of ballparks. And I'm glad you got to talk to him. I think I listened to that one, really enjoyed it.
I didn't realize that you guys knew each other. I mean, I knew you were familiar with each other online, but I didn't realize that you worked at the same school. Did you inspire each other to do the baseball trips?
Yeah, I think so. Andy's one of my best mates. In fact,
I had no idea.
I tweeted a photo of me and him about an hour ago on my Twitter account. But Andy's someone I speak to most days on WhatsApp. We worked at the same school. We overlapped for 3 years. I got into baseball in Japan. My parents came over for a holiday to visit me when I moved to South Korea in Seoul. And my uncle's half Japanese, so we've got family links to Japan. None of us had been there. We flew over. I saw a game in Japan, came back to Korea, my school there, and I said to Andy, I saw a baseball game, absolutely loved it. And we began collecting KBO cards, baseball cards together. And that's kind of how we became quite friendly. We used to play football or soccer with each other on Friday with a lot of other people I work with. So I knew him already. He worked on the second floor of the building. I worked on the fifth floor. So I didn't really see him during the day. But because of the baseball cards, we became friendly. And then we began going to Korean ballparks together. And he used to paint in the outfield. And I just annoy him. I just annoy him and have a few beers and ask him all these questions about what's going on with the scoreboard, because he could read Hangul and he could translate, what the statistics were, like which one was batting average and which one was on base percentage, etc.
Right. Yeah, and even though I'm American and baseball is kind of in my blood and I grew up with the game here, but you've probably seen more of the game around the world than I have. You've seen games, you mentioned it, in Korea, in Japan, Canada, America. I've never seen a baseball game outside of the United States. So tell me, what's different about baseball in America than Korea or Japan?
Oh boy, I mean, we're kind of round the other way here. So I saw my first game in Japan. I've seen most of my baseball in Korea. The American League, MLB, was the third league I kind of began exploring. So the difference is, I guess, Japan, it's the first country I kind of went to because I spent my first summer getting into baseball, traveling around Japan, watching the MPB, and the Oryx Buffaloes are my team out there. So it's very noisy. It's very organized. It's very clean. People will pick up their litter after the game. They come around with bags and they put all their rubbish in there and, they recycle it. And if you leave anything, it's very much a social faux pas. There's brass instruments and trombones and trumpets and stuff and moments when one set of fans cheer and then another set of fans cheer. In Japan and Korea, you get a lot of away fans traveling, particularly in Korea, because Korea is really only about 5 hours from top to bottom. And the public transport system's so sophisticated that you can easily get on the train or a bus and travel. And the teams in Korea, this is something that's quite different between Korea and the MLB, is in Korea the teams are named after huge conglomerates that are Korean. So it's not necessarily geographic based on your fandom. If, for example, you work for Kia, the car manufacturer, even though Kia is in Gwangju in the southwest of the country, if you work for Kia in a different part of the country, they will still be your team, possibly, rather than the local team.
Really?
And that's something that's very different.
Yeah, it's more corporate driven, I guess, as far as the team allegiances instead of geographical.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm an LG Twins fan, and I don't think I own anything that's LG. In fact, my phone that I still have is my old Korean phone. I've still got my old Korean number. That's Samsung. So maybe I should be a Lions fan. But for me, it was geographic. But for many people in Korea, it's more to do with, who they work for.
So it seems like Korean baseball, or Asian baseball in general, because Japanese baseball seems this way as well. They have the walk-up songs, but it's more than just a walk-up song. People have their own songs. Eric Thames, I remember, who's now in the major leagues, is a guy that I played against, and he was a huge deal over in Korea, and he had his own amazing song over there. And you have the walk-up songs here in America, but it feels like it's more personal over in Japan or Korea.
Yeah, it's certainly more personal, and we need to backtrack there. You said you played with Eric Thames.
I played against him. So I played, I'm about the same age as Eric Thames. He played in a summer league that I played in called the Northwoods League, and he played for the Lacrosse Loggers, and one of my good buddies was teammates with him, and then I played for the Rochester Honkers, and then we played against one another. So, yeah, I played against Eric Thames.
You dropped that so casually that I wasn't going to let you get away with that, Tim.
Well,
yeah, I had to follow that one up.
He's one of those guys that he was a big deal in college, and then he didn't really pan out in the major leagues and ended up having to go back to Korea. And then once he came back, I was like, oh, what a great story. So I've always followed him because he's one of those guys that I played against, and I love that his kind of redemption story in Korea, finding his game again, then coming back and having a successful MLB stint here too.
Yeah, Eric Thames, from a personal point of view, 2015 was the year I saw my first baseball game in Japan and began watching it in Korea. And he had such an outstanding season in 2015. I think he got 40 stolen bases, which is really hard to believe, a bloke of that size now. 40 stolen bases, 47 home runs. And he adorned height beer bottles. His feat were so historic that they had a picture of him on one of the big Korean, kind of beer companies. So every time I went for a Korean barbecue, I'd pick up a beer, and there was Eric, like looking at me, like holding a base up above his head. He's a player that I really look out for now. He's probably my third favorite player after Zach Greinke and Shin-Soo Choo.
Why is that Greinke? Just because he's so unique?
Yeah, Greinke was playing for the Dodgers in 2015, and I realized that MLB games were shown free on Korean TV in the morning. And I began watching the English language broadcasts of MLB to try and understand the rules. And because Hyun-Jin Ryu, number 99, was on the Dodgers then, he was injured in 2015, I think. So he wasn't playing. But I fell in love with Kershaw and Greinke, the two aces they had in 2015. And Greinke, I remember, I felt he should have won the NL Cy Young that year. I was still learning about statistics, so I was trying to compare him to the other two rivals that he was up against. But I love the slower stuff he threw. He's the most Korean-like pitcher in MLB, in my opinion, and I'm not a baseball expert, but from an aesthetic point of view and a speed point of view and a crafty point of view, and he fields his position, and he's got a very, kind of different personality, which I also respect and admire.
Yeah, him and Kershaw are artists, especially in the game today. Major League Baseball, it's like, velocity is everything and miles per hour as a pitcher, and yet you got Kershaw and Greinke, you continue to reinvent themselves, adding new pitches, mixing with speeds and things, and they're real artists on the mound. So it's amazing that you picked up on that right away.
Yeah, I just like the way it looked. I like the fact he's a bit older. I think he's 36 now, Greinke, and he's pretty much always like the first or second pitcher I try and draft in any fantasy league because people still kind of don't, they think he's going to decline, and I keep getting him at age 34, age 35, age 36. So. Yeah, I love Zach, and excited now he's with the Houston Astros and on a team where he might be able to get a ring.
What surprised you about American baseball? When you came here last summer, you watched over 150 games here, but your initial introduction was, Asian baseball. So what surprised you when you came over here?
I think just the size of the ballparks in the States are quite different. My home ballpark, as I still call it, is Jamsil Stadium in Seoul, and that's one of the larger ones in the KBO that holds 26,500 fans. When I flew to the States for the first time to watch Major League Baseball, I went to Yankee Stadium because the Texas Rangers were playing the Yankees, and Shin-Soo Choo, I think he was injured actually back then. This is 2016, but I was just amazed at how vast Yankee Stadium was, and certainly being in a big city like New York and everyone arriving on the subway and things. There were some parallels to Seoul. Seoul's a huge city as well, and the public transport system there is very good. But the sheer vastness of the ballpark was probably the thing that I was most kind of overawed by.
I got to imagine throughout your summer here last year that you ate a lot of ballpark food. What was your go-to, ballpark food that you would get every night?
Jeez. Go-to ballpark food was a hot dog and peanuts in the shells and a Miller Lite beer, and
that's a pretty American. That's a pretty American order right there.
Yeah, I thought a plain hot dog was, it's just bread and meat, or mostly meat. So I thought that wouldn't upset the stomach too much. That was the big thing, Tim, about being on the road for as long as I was. I think in total it spanned over 8 months last year. I didn't want to be doing a lot of craft beers and messy food and, having to drive 6-7 hours the next day or worry about, logistical stuff and my stomach's rumbling all over the place. So I kept it pretty simple, and the peanuts and the plain hot dog made sure I was able to get in the car and drive as far as I needed to.
Yeah, what about when you're on the road? Did you have like an American fast food stop that you would frequent? Like, did you hit up the McDonald's, or did you try to make it regional? How did you handle that?
Oh, mate, I love your fast food stuff. It's
we got a lot of it.
I could not help myself. Honestly, it was really bad. Here in the UK, where I grew up, I lived here till I was 29. We've only really got 3 fast food shops that are throughout the whole country. London's got its own thing going on, but I didn't grow up in London. So we have Burger King and McDonald's and KFC. And in the States, I mostly dominated McDonald's because they were so easy to find on the long drives, and I'd go in there and get Wi-Fi on my phone and have a coffee. But I loved all the regional stuff. So In-N-Out Burger on the West Coast and Whataburger in Texas.
Yeah.
There was is it a Freddy's or something I had in Kansas?
Yes, Freddy's.
Yeah, that one didn't agree with me. But it's I love trying all of it, mate. Yeah.
That's great. And so, you built a pretty big following last summer. You have a cool profile picture on Twitter, and you got this mustache, right? And the mustache kind of became your trademark. And I got to imagine that you would get a lot of DMs on Twitter, especially with that good looking mustache that you had. Did American women like the mustache?
Absolutely not, Tim. No, however many DMs you think I got, just take all of those DMs away, and that's how many I actually got. 0. I think once in Oklahoma, I got a DM in the folder because I didn't follow them, and it was just a picture of someone's cleavage. But she was like 23 or 22, and I'm 34. So I was 34 then. So I was just like, nah, I'm not replying to that, and just deleted it.
Yeah, were you able to interact with people while you were here much, or because you were visiting city to city, was it just, one stop, get a hot dog, get a Miller Lite, watch a game, and then 6 hours to the next city?
I tried, because I had quite a lot of time, I always tried to be in one place for at least 2 nights so I could get a feel for, A, the ballpark, but B, also the area and the local businesses and things and the people that live there. That wasn't always possible. There were some parts of the trip that were quite rushed and some parts of the trip where I had more time. But on the whole, I always think you need at least 2 to 3 days, I think, to really appreciate what's going on.
What's the worst place that you stayed? Did you stay in any real rough hotels or anything?
Worst place I stayed. I mean, I slept in my car a couple of times in public car parks, having to wait for the security guard to go past and, urinating around the back of your vehicle and hoping that you're not going to get arrested because it's on CCTV. That kind of stuff is a big worry. But that was probably the worst place I stayed. It was just in the back of my car around the back of dodgy hotels or, in public car parks.
One of my favorite things about following you is you've kind of taken a liking to American college football, and I noticed you adopted like Tulane, the Green Wave, as your college football team. Yeah, you're showing on Skype here, you're showing their emblem right now. How did this happen? How did you start cheering for Tulane football?
By complete coincidence, really. I was in a Kansas City hotel one night, and I think there'd been an afternoon game, and I was back in the hotel that evening, and there was nothing to do. I was hoping to get my laundry done, but they didn't have a laundry room. So I was just flicking through TV, and they had a college game on. It was Louisville against Notre Dame. I don't know how you say it.
Yeah, Notre Dame.
But, it just blew me away how many people were in the stadium, and the big kind of bird that was in the middle of the field, and the fact they had French-sounding names, 2 French-sounding teams like Louisville and Notre Dame playing a very American thing, and all these students and adults watching. I had no idea what was going on. So I began trying to, wherever possible, if I saw it in like a restaurant, I'd kind of say, hey, can you turn this up? And I'd watch some college football and try and learn about it. And began downloading podcasts for the long roads, for the long drives I had, trying to learn about the 10 conferences in D1 and the Big 5 and the SEC and all this kind of stuff. So it got to a point where I thought, geez, like to really learn more about this, because I was, as an educator for 10 years, I'm interested from a educational point of view, but also from a sporting point of view about what happens in colleges in the States. So I was in Minneapolis, I think, and I said, right, I'm just going to spin a wheel. And I kind of gave people a day's notice. Tomorrow I'm going to spin this wheel. And I just had the top 25 from the AP. Is it the AP? They were top 25.
The Associated Press.
Stands for. Associated Press, sorry. So they'd done a top 25, and I said, I'm going to spin this wheel. And then I got so much abuse like so much abuse. Like when I parked my car up in McDonald's and got back on Wi-Fi, there's all these people going, no, don't just do those top 25. So then I just copied and pasted all 130 D1 schools, whatever it's called, and span the wheel, pretty hungover, one Saturday in Minneapolis because I got my time zones wrong and I'd announced when I was going to do it. So I woke up groggy, span it, and it landed. I remember it landed on number 49, and I didn't know how to pronounce it, which was embarrassing. Tulane or Tulane, whatever. But they're my team, and I didn't know where they were, and I went back to bed because I was so groggy. And when I woke up again about 2 hours later, I had all these DMs from Tulane University and their football department saying, hey, we saw you do this. Can we send you some stuff? And I was like, what? Are you joking? I thought I'd offended them. I thought I'd been maybe disrespectful by not knowing where they were. But yeah, and then a love affair began with Tulane and New Orleans, a city I'd never been to. And yeah, I love Tulane now, and it's a great university as well. And as a former educator, I'm always telling people, if you're tempted to live in New Orleans, and why not study at Tulane? It's a great place to go.
So you've been to Tulane now?
Yeah. I went. I flew. So I thought I was done. I did a full regular season, and I flew out of Toronto back to London, I think September the 29th, like the day after the regular season ended. And I thought, I need a rest. Like, my diet has been dreadful for 6, 7, 8
Right.
months. And I just need to spend some time with the family back in England where I grew up. But I woke up one morning, and the Yankees had just lost to the Astros, and I had a message from Gina, who I'd become friendly with. Gina's from Houston. She was the wife, or is the wife, sorry, of Jeff Lou now, the general manager of the Houston Astros.
Oh yeah.
And so I woke up and Gina said, "Hey Joey, we just beat the Yankees. If you can get to Houston tomorrow, we've got World Series tickets for you."
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh my God. So I just woken up, and I've been back in England for about 3 weeks or 4 weeks now. And I just thought, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I checked my bank balance and I thought, oh no, I really shouldn't do this. But then by sheer coincidence, I had another DM that same morning from a guy who was a pilot is a pilot for American Airlines. And he said, hey, I saw you're a Tulane fan. I'm an LSU fan. We're playing each other in college baseball in March. If you're up for it and you don't think this is super weird, I can get you on a kind of mate's rate, like a friend's rate for the airline in March, and fly you over, and we can watch LSU versus Tulane in a one-off game.
Whoa.
And I was like, this is amazing, but any chance I can use that now to get to Houston tonight, because I've got this World Series invite. So it all came together. Like, there was a lot of luck involved, Tim, in the whole trip. A lot of coincidence, a lot of, good fortune, or, my family are quite religious. So, they'd say it was, people looking out for me or whatever. But I don't want to go into that. But I flew there the next day, got a really cheap flight, good rate, and watched the World Series. And then I realized I'm close to New Orleans, like 6 hours on a Greyhound bus. So I headed out there, and it was their homecoming, just by sheer chance.
Oh,
Again,
man.
It was their homecoming. And they, I think, maybe it's just people in Louisiana, because I'd never been to Louisiana, but they were so warm and welcoming. And it was embarrassing at times because I'm just an idiot, a complete, muppet with a moustache that doesn't know too much about baseball, but loves watching it and telling people about it and trying to get people interested in it. So I went to New Orleans and had, one of the best weeks of my entire life. And I'm Tulane for life, always will be now.
Are you going to be back this year? Like, say this quarantine lifts for college football or baseball season. Do you have any plans to come back?
I would love to get back if it's safe to do so for homecoming for Tulane. It's more dependent on, obviously, the global health pandemic, but also
Sure.
I'm writing a book at the moment, and I'm hoping that's going to provide some income. And if it does, then I'll be there straight away. And if not, then I need to go back to teaching because I am properly broke.
What's the timeline on the book?
Well, I've written 96,000 words. I'm still working on the chapters and the structure and the themes. I want to make sure the book is as much for people that don't have an interest in baseball as people that do. And that way, hopefully, I can hook them into the baseball stuff, because it's a road trip and it's an adventure, and it's a book about Americans and about what America looked like in 2019. The last summer, really, before the world changed, from the view of an outsider myself. So I'm hoping. I could probably hand in a proposal in the next 3 or 4 weeks, but with the economy the way it is, I'm just kind of biding my time and making sure I hand it in at when people are more confident. And if I can get a good deal, then I'll be in Tulane at Tulane for homecoming this year.
That's fantastic. I was hoping you were writing a book about it, and I can't wait to read that one.
There's a lot of weird stuff happened, which I which I didn't share on Twitter for reasons that will become apparent if you get the book.
I can't wait.
A lot of crazy, weird stuff happened.
So in your life right now, are you full-time promoting baseball in the UK, or is anybody paying you yet? Or, how has the world changed since you've started this journey?
I mean, no one's paying me anything. I want to make that perfectly clear. I had a few offers when I got back after the trip. I always want to make sure it's the right thing. So gambling companies, right now, that's not something I'm interested in. I had a podcast that was due to launch with Pitching Ninja, Rob, who runs the account, Rob Friedman. And there was quite a lot of interest in that from various media outlets and sponsors. But we had a producer, that was doing it all very professionally. And pretty much, I think it was 3 days before we had our trailer that was going to launch, a teaser trailer, the world changed. And we made a decision together that this probably isn't the best time to launch this, and there are other more important things to worry about. So, yeah, that went on the back burner, and all the commercial stuff obviously fell away. But I'm hoping. Rob messaged me last night. He's such a lovely bloke. He's keen about growing the game in the States and around the world, and I share the same vision that he has. So I'm hoping we can still get it up and running if and when MLB returns.
Cool. Well, I know you're a big fan of the podcast, Joey, and the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Here we go. The first question is, who is the one player that you want to meet?
That's a good one. It would be Zach Greinke, but because of his personality, I'm not going to say that because I know it'd make him uncomfortable. It would be Shin-Soo Choo, my second favourite, but I've met him already, and he's a delight, let me tell you. So it would have to be Eric Thames, my third favourite player.
Eric Thames. Yeah, we got to hook this up. I feel like you've been really pushing Eric Thames the last couple of years. You need to meet him.
He's my favourite player if he asks.
What was your favorite city in America?
Oh, boy. That's a really good question. I get asked about ballparks a lot, but I don't think anyone's asked me what's my favorite city. It's going to be a weird one, probably for your listeners, but Kansas City. Yeah, Kansas City. I like the Midwest as an area, and it's a slower pace of life. They've got great barbecue, really, really kind people, and they're my team, the Royals, so Kansas City.
Yeah, I got a brother in Kansas City. 3 of the guys that helped me out with this podcast live down in KC, so it's just 2.5 hours from where I'm at right now. Great place, great city.
Yeah, not far from you, Tim. Are you in? Where are you? Des Moines.
Des Moines, yeah.
No, yeah, Des Moines.
Yeah,
okay.
Iowa Cubs.
That's where Slipknot are from, aren't they?
That's right, Slipknot. Are you a Slipknot fan?
Slipknot. I love a bit of Slipknot, mate. Yeah, Wait and Bleed.
Oh man, it's so funny because most of people from Des Moines are like country music. Country and Western type music people. And then you have Slipknot, which is the farthest thing from that, but they have a huge following here.
Slipknot and Bill Bryson from Des Moines.
That's right. I'm a big Bill Bryson fan. Now, this is not one of the 5 big questions, Joey, but now that I should ask, did you adopt any love for country music while you were here?
I did. Yeah. I posted something on my Twitter about country music maybe a week ago, and I've never lost so many followers in one time so quickly. Yeah, but then I went to sleep and I woke up and I'd actually gained them. So I think country music, it's one of those, it's kind of like you either love it or you hate it, I think, just from my own experience with it. When I was in certain parts of the USA, I used to listen to certain music, not deliberately, but whenever I was driving kind of more the South and Texas, I listened to country. And when I was in the Midwest, it was more like emo. And then kind of when I was on the West Coast, it was more hip hop and rap kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do like, who's your favorite country artist?
Well, I'm kind of an old school country fan. So, I'm a big Willie Nelson fan, Waylon Jennings, Merle Haggard, some of that stuff, and some of the guys that kind of come from that lineage. I'm not much into, the newer poppy country stuff, but I like the old stuff that hurts a little bit.
Yeah, there seems a divide even within country. Like you either hate country or you love country, but even within that group that love country, there's a divide between the more kind of pop Nashville sound and then the more I'm a big George Strait fan.
Yeah.
In Texas, I used to listen to a lot of George Strait, but I do like some of the newer stuff as well. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, I think anybody that's been through a broken heart, like you described earlier, I've had a couple of breakups in my day, and
mate,
I've been at the bottom of a bottle with Willie Nelson, for a couple of weeks on end, and I think we all need that.
Yeah, there's something about it that certainly hits home sometimes.
So, you've been all over the world, Joey. Which part of the world has felt most foreign to you?
Ooh, probably. I went to a country that's called Myanmar. It used to be called Burma, but now it's called Myanmar. And I went to the city of Yangon. And I remember when I got off the plane, just the smell, and there were stray dogs like kind of brushing against my hand and stuff, and beetles going across the road. And yeah, I'd not really seen poverty like that. But some of and the men wear kind of skirt type garments.
Really?
And I had the guy that picked me up from the airport drove me to my hotel, and he said, "I'll be your driver for the whole time you're here." I was like, "No, you don't have to do that, mate. Don't worry about it." But he was there at the hotel lobby the next morning waiting for me. And I tried to tip him a load of money at the end of the week, and I left it in an envelope in his car on the back seat. And when I checked out the following morning, when I went to the desk, they said, "Oh, your driver came back and gave you this," and it was the envelope with the tip in. Like, it's part of, the kindest people. They don't have much, and I really wanted to thank him in a financial way as well as in a kind of personal way. But he handed it back. It was against his kind of culture. So yeah, that's that. I was only there for 5 days, but that blew my mind. Like Myanmar in Southeast Asia.
What's the next thing that you want to cross off your baseball bucket list?
Ooh, great question. I think because the CPBL was the first professional league to start, and I'd always had plans to get to Taiwan. And I used to message Rob from Go CPBL, the account on Twitter. Back in 2018, I was like, talk me through it. And then I got this girlfriend and stuff, so I didn't make it. But I think Taiwan's next.
Cool. And finally, Joey, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, it's like a real.
These
teacher,
are the 5 big questions here, Joey. We bring the hard hitting stuff out at the end.
As a teacher, I should have something profound to say here, but I think it's just be yourself and follow your heart, and be kind. That's it, really. Just be kind.
I love that. Well, Joey, the baseball Brit, thank you so much for joining the Moonlight Graham Show. It's been fun to get connected, and I just love what you're doing on Twitter and social media to promote the game of baseball around the world. You do such a great job of it. You're a great voice for the game, and I hope the book turns out really well for you.
Tim, I don't know what to say to that, mate. Blushing here, but very kind words. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, you bet, Joey. Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.